Hello, and welcome back to the Aural Mess podcast. I'm joined this week by author Wendall Thomas. Hi, Wendall.
Hey, Chad.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. I really appreciate you coming on. And why don't you tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Well, I'm an author, mystery author, and short crime fiction writer, but I also teach in the graduate film school at UCLA. I've been doing that since 1997, so a really long time. And because of that, at least before the pandemic, I had an opportunity to do a lot of lecturing about screenwriting overseas. So that's kind of my work life. I grew up in North Carolina. We'll talk more about that later. My North Carolina Don-Dixon connection. And I taught at an all-male boarding school in 1981. Wow. I was the first single woman to teach at Deerfield Academy, which was my first job out of college. So that's probably the stupidest thing I ever did. And otherwise, I've been in LA since '86. I drove out with my albums, my cat, and my 65 Ford Galaxie 500.
Amazing. Do you still have that car?
I wish I still had that car. Believe me.
Yeah.
It was the best car I ever had. I loved it.
I bet. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, great. So, we sort of connected, as I do with many of my guests, through social media. We started, talking on Twitter, and when I saw that you had written these novels, I went and read the first one and was just immediately in love with your writing. So, of course, I asked you to come on, and as I ask a lot of my guests, what are you currently listening to? Since this is a music podcast, we can jump right into that. Give me some things that are, stuck in your ear lately.
Yeah, so we've been, we recently, for a long time, I didn't have anywhere to put my kind of stacked audio thing, my turntable, monitor, all of that stuff, and we have a place now. So I've been running the 5 CD shuffle, which is really great. It's beautiful because it's not shuffling everything in your 35,000 song collection, So anyway. So I've been doing a lot of Benny Moré, and I was very late to him as it big band Cuban, Afro-Cuban stuff. I just love him. So I've been playing a lot of that. I've been listening to, actually Frank Sinatra at the Sands is on our shuffle as well, which is an interesting thing. And then I don't know if you've heard the new Ricky Lee Jones.
No.
She just, she just made a new record with Russ Titleman, her original producer, and it's all standards.
Oh, very
kind of
cool.
Pop. But yeah, it's really good. So it's in there, and a touch of Schmilson in the night. So those are kind of in my thing because I haven't listened to that in ages. And then I've been writing a story set in 1990. So I've been listening to a lot of stuff that I bought or listened to around that time. So that's the Bodines and Lyle Lovett as a big band, and Chris Isaak and Bonnie Raitt's actually Nick of Time, and Joni Mitchell's To Talk, Mark and Rainstorm, and then the B-52s. So that's kind of it brings back that period for me. So I've been listening to that stuff mostly. And then I just, I shuffle all the time. So I'm always reminded of things that I love that I haven't heard in 4 months or something,
That's great. And you mentioned the Bodines. I haven't heard that name in a minute. North Carolina band, right?
Yeah, but they were discovered by Jerry Harrison. That's how I found them.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
He produced that first record, and so I really like them actually when they were still making records. I don't know if they've made one in forever. I think I have the first 4, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, but I always love harmonies and jangly guitar. So, Jim Blossoms, whatever. I love all that stuff. Totally. Birds related. I love all of that.
Oh, I do too. One of my favorite genres. And I played the Bodines on my college radio show in '89 in Greensboro. So we have a North Carolina connection in common.
You were in Greensboro? Oh, you're kidding.
I was.
Did you go to UNCG or where were you?
I went to UNCG for 2 years. Yeah. 89 to 91.
From UNCG.
Oh, no kidding.
I graduated from Carolina. Yeah.
Okay.
That's so funny. I love that.
Yeah, that's great. You also mentioned Bonnie Raitt. So, and I recently learned that you have a connection with Bonnie Raitt. You want to tell us about that? That's a great story.
Yeah, it's kind of an amazing story. So I was back in kind of mid-90s through the early 2000s. I was just hanging out a lot with Melissa Etheridge, who's just the loveliest person ever. I met her through Julie Cypher. It's a long story, but Julie was married to Lou Diamond Phillips, and I met her on the Young Guns set when I worked on that. And then when she and Melissa got married, then I hung with them a lot. And she knew I loved Bonnie Raitt, and she was really busy. And so she said, look, is there any way you can put something together for me for the induction? So I got to call Bonnie Raitt's office and get all these notes. And of course, my speech was like 50 times longer than the one that got given. So she very much sliced it up, which is fine because I had every credit and everything she's done for the blues musicians and like all of that stuff I wanted in, but of course not time. But anyway, so I got to write it and it was, surreal, really. Because Melissa was always really, really generous. She introduced me to John Prine. She hung out with Katie Lang a lot, so I got to meet Katie Lang. She introduced me to Bonnie. They were just, you know what I mean? So it was a little bit like I was such the loser friend in that situation, but I was peripherally got to meet. And I think Bonnie, when she was married to Michael, what's his name, who dumped her, which we hate him for that. Anyway, they came to like a New Year's Eve party and I was there or something. So I don't really know her. She wouldn't remember me probably, but just to even be in that, I don't know, just stratosphere, looking in was just amazing for me. Cause the first time I heard, one track from Taking My Time, I walked 3 miles to the record bar to buy that album. Like I couldn't ever recover from that. So that's probably the coolest thing I ever got to do in my whole life. I would say, is to write that speech.
That's super cool. And I'll link the video in the show notes because you sent me the YouTube link and that's great. And I watched it. Then I watched it sort of shuffled up right after that Bonnie's acceptance speech. So I'll post both below. But so cool, cool to watch that.
She's such a badass, and she's still, unbelievable still and always. I love her so much.
Yeah, me too. I think we were talking right before we started recording about her, but like I came very late to the Bonnie Raitt game. I think she wasn't really my speed in the 80s and 90s when I was sort of in my formative music years, really. But, sort of got turned on to some of her 70s stuff and, man, just blew me away. And she does a cover of Can't Find My Way Home by Bad Faith.
It's unbelievable with Lil George.
For.
I have that recording. It's unbelievable. I know.
Yeah. Love it.
She's such a good player. No one gives her the credit. She should be on all of those top 100 lists. Seriously.
Oh, for sure. She's totally underrated as a guitarist. Yeah.
I don't know why. Well, it's a pretty sexist list in general, but of course. She should be on that list in my opinion. And she's also she's really generous, to other artists. And I don't know. I think she's really somebody to be admired. Like she and Ry Cooder, I admire above almost all else in terms of their generosity and the people they've helped and pulled along and stuff. They're both amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, she's amazing. So you mentioned going back to 1990 and listening to some stuff to sort of prepare for or help you get in the right headspace to write a piece. So tell me a bit about your writing process and how music factors into that, because that to me is very fascinating,
I think I'm somebody who can listen to music while I'm writing fiction. I can do that. I can listen to I can have lyrics because some people can't, or some people have to have total silence. But I usually do headphones, so there's nothing but the music that I'm hearing, or as little as possible. And I usually have something that I listen to for every book or every piece, but sometimes it's counterintuitive. Like it's not always the obvious thing that I would listen to. So for some reason, I think when I was writing Fogged Off, I kept listening to Ella and Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. Like that makes no sense at all, but it had the feeling of something for me. So it's not always, I kind of decide intuitively what to listen to. And sometimes I make a playlist or two. But it depends. Like the stuff I write, the short fiction that I write is all set in 90s LA. And so it's pretty easy to take. I love LA in the 90s, just my favorite ever. And so it's pretty easy to zap back to that, put on Dionne Farris, or like there's a million people that are like that. So that's kind of nice. But in terms of the Sid books, I think that I am, well, we'll talk a little bit about what I associate with her, but but the thing and that's the weirdest thing I do, I guess not that weird, but it must seem weird, is when I'm writing dialogue, I have to get up and pace. And so I will have something on that I hope is going to trigger. And then in my headphones with my long cord, I have like 3 of those boingy, you know what I mean? Really long cords. And I will pace if I'm writing dialogue for whatever reason. And when I was a screenwriter, I wrote more dialogue even. So that's when I started doing that, I think. It's just doing the pacing, listening thing. And maybe it's a rhythm. Maybe it's rhythmic.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you're not listening to something specific to the story, but you're getting it's more of a vibe, right? Is sort of what you were saying.
I did. Yeah. I definitely listened to some gamelan music for cheap trills, like the Balinese music. I definitely listened to that, and that was great. But but it wasn't all that I listened to.
Right. So you actually have a songwriting credit, I understand, too.
Hilariously. Yeah, when I was a teenager, my best friend growing up was really this guy named Wyatt Easterling, who is still playing all the time. He's got tons of albums out. He was an A&R guy in Nashville for a long time. He's been a music producer. He wrote several hits for other people in Nashville. Anyway, I love him. We've been friends since we were 12. We used to. We had one teacher who would give us a note so we could get out of class and go outside and play guitar on the playground when we were like 12. So I've known him forever. And so he's always been very straight ahead and very ambitious and great. And when we were 15, we started playing together at this place called Bambino's in Durham, North Carolina, and just off Highway 85. And I was underage and all this stuff. And I always tell this story because my mom is extremely religious and my dad is extremely cool. And so my mom, every time I would go off to play in this place because they played beer, my mom would go, "You're going to hell." And then my dad would come and run the soundboard. So that's basically my parents. But yeah, so Wyatt and I played. And then I had a band. I had a band that played at this pizza joint. And we played, ridiculous. Fleetwood Mac, the worst version of Fleetwood Mac ever done. Or, Andrew Gold. I don't know. Anyway, it was ridiculous. And then every night at the end, I would do Danny Boy for my dad, my late dad.
Nice. Aw.
But anyway, long story. So Wyatt decided to do a record, and he's written a lot of really beautiful songs, and I'll show it to you. It's so hilarious because it doesn't have the best cover ever. But anyway, when we were, I guess, so I must have been, 19, 20 or something. But anyway, here's Wyatt. And then it actually says, name of my song, you can't really see it. It's called Selfish Lover. But you see at the very bottom, bass, Don Dixon.
Yeah.
So that is the coolest. But the thing I have to show you that will make you laugh, Judd, is I used to sneak out. I think I told you this. I used to sneak out with my junior high girlfriends to go see his band Arrogance at the Cat's Cradle. And here is their album. And there's Don. Okay, is that the funniest?
Amazing.
Ever? Vanguard Records, 1976.
That is the best photo ever.
Isn't it? So anyway, and I don't really know Don. And then he went on to play with Marty Jones forever, and they've been working together forever. So I love her, but we're not friends or anything. But I was around a little bit, and Wyatt still knows him. And he did some other stuff at Reflections with some friends of mine. But I always had a crush on him, and I still do. Although, have you ever seen his video for Praying Mantis?
No.
All right. Well, you have to look that up. I'll send you some links because it is it's one of the worst videos ever made on the planet. And so you must see it. But he's such a talented guy. He's a great singer. He's a really good songwriter. He's such a good producer. And obviously, REM thought that. So can't beat it. And Guadalcanal Diary. He's done tons of stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. You're throwing so many names out that I haven't even heard in years, let alone listen to.
Well, that's because I'm so old. I am so old.
Well, so am I because I know them all. So you're in good company. But for the viewers and listeners, Don produced REM's first 2 albums, I think, Murmur and Reckoning, and I think he was brought on by Mitch Easter to help out
together.
Yeah. So
and Mitch was a North Carolina guy too.
Right.
They were all Chapel Hill people. So
yeah, so much music came out of that area, Chapel Hill especially in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I think I put it on the thing, the swimming pool cues. Did you ever hear them? They were
No.
actually out of Athens too, I think, but they were great. And Richmond, Boston. They're really good. You would like them, I think.
Yeah, I'll have to check them out.
Yeah.
So speaking of music and deep cuts, so you have been doing this thing on Facebook called Album Cut of the Day for some time. And you sound a lot like me because I make lists and I have to like track things and capture things. And sounds like you did a little bit of that yourself. So why don't you tell me a bit about how that started and where you've gone with it?
Okay, so I always bought a lot of singles, and then when I could afford it, albums. My dad got me my first album ever was Pisces, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Jones, which I still have, believe it or not, Monkeys. But I started collecting records and stuff when I don't know, 10 maybe. That's all I used my allowance for ever was records, and so I had a lot. Had a lot of records, and I probably at some point had maybe, I don't know, over 2,000 albums, and I brought them all to LA, almost all in my car, which was really, my car was like that going over. But when about 5 years ago, my husband was just like, enough with these albums, like they're too heavy. You have, all of that stuff. And they aren't really saleable because I play the song 50 times. Like all of them are scratched as hell, because I just can't. If I loved a song, I would just play it over and over and over.
Sure.
So they're all trashed, or my cat has like scratched the tops of them or whatever it was. So I agreed. My compromise was if I had it on MP3, if I had a CD and I had a cassette, then I could get rid of the vinyl. Except for some of the really important ones. So anyway, I started making these stacks of records that I was going to, give away. And I just would go back and go, oh my God, I haven't listened to that song in forever. I haven't listened to that song in forever. So I just started posting, like, it's a little bit of a mournful, like, here go my albums, don't you remember this song off, I don't know, Robert Palmer's Secrets or whatever, or the Roaches or something. And I did it for a few days, and then I just kept doing it, and then people started liking it, and then I just kept doing it, and now I've done it for 5 years. So I don't know, it's 1,500 songs, something like that, I think. And so I try to do, it started out just like my favorite stuff, right? But then I was like, I tried to shake it up a little bit. So I try to do, obviously a lot of my favorite stuff is singer-songwriter, 70s California, or Steely Dan, or all of that. But I also love soul music. I think the first single I bought was The Nitty Gritty by Gladys Knight. Like that's
wow.
And Joe Tex single at like 12 or something. So I love soul too. So I've tried to I think I started out kind of alternating singer-songwriter stuff and soul stuff, and then I threw in some prog rock because I love Genesis, and then I threw it, and I love jazz, and so I just so now what I try to do is shake it up so I'm not having the same kind of music every day, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I think about it. Like I'll go like 2 weeks out and decide what I want to post, unless something hits me on the day, or like the other day at Paul McCartney's birthday, I had to post Maybe I'm Amazed, because what are you going to, you got to do that.
But you have to.
So I do that, and then I try to mix it up a little bit, but I don't know. It's really interesting. Like yesterday, I posted Laura Nero's original version of Wedding Bell Blues. Like some days I don't get anybody, and for some reason, like 40 people love that. I have no idea. It's really interesting that was one that just, you never know which one is going to go completely. No one's going to say a word about it, and then other things. There's this whole discussion.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I feel about it. But it's mostly just because it makes me really happy to do it. Like I really enjoy, and I feel okay because people are depending on me now. So I don't feel bad about wasting the time of going on YouTube and finding the track and all of that stuff, because it's one of my favorite things I do in my life, actually. So I don't know.
That's really cool. It's like a daily journal almost, like it's something you sort of have to get out. I should start doing something like that too. I love that idea.
And you would have such interesting stuff too. Because see, you and my husband are about the same age. So he has a totally different, like, you'll appreciate this story. So our second date was driving from Los Angeles to Santa Fe.
Wow.
And we both made...
That's a hell of a second date.
It really was. And so we both made tapes for the trip, and we hated each other's music. It was like there's almost no crossover. And we were like, is this a mistake? Like, what are we doing? It was hilarious. And then we, gradually we found like we both liked Elvis Costello. We both liked Queen. Like we found a few, and now we have a lot more in common, but it was hilarious. It was hilarious because his was all like OMD and Pet Shop Boys and, Tangerine Dream and Chemical Brothers and like all of this stuff. And I was like, Joni. Carly Simon. So it was really hilarious. But
I have a similar story with my wife and I. When we first started dating, I was making her like mix CDs, that's sort of the era that we were in then. And first couple ones that I made, I was like, oh, did you like this song? And she's like, no, I really don't like Radiohead. And I'm like, you don't like Radiohead? I'm like, okay. Like, all right, I can't break up with you yet. Strike one, right? Like, but it's so funny because you just sort of said the same thing. It's like, do we make this huge mistake? I mean, music is so important, and I think liking the same music.
First boyfriend I ever had where music wasn't the way we connected. Do you know what I mean? Right, it was really interesting to me that I married him. You know what I mean? That seems odd, but but yeah, that's the whole same thing because. So many relationships, friendships, and everything we're making. I mean, for me, cassettes to begin with, and then CDs.
Yeah.
So much. I mean, it was, and I still have all mine. Do you have yours?
Yeah, I still have. I have mixtapes that I made for people that I got back for whatever reason. I have mixtapes I made for myself. I have mixtapes that ex-girlfriends made for me. Yeah, and not many people made me mix CDs because I think maybe a lot of people didn't know how to burn CDs, so it was a little harder. But yeah, I mean, I still have a bunch, and I kept all the ones that I made for my wife before we were married. So they're with all the rest of my CDs, which are sort of went through a similar situation with you, as I had about 2,500 CDs, and my wife and I got married, moved into a small condo, and she was like, you can't have like 3 bookcases full of CDs in the living room. It's not going to work. So I had to get rid of all the jewel cases and put them in like the folders, the binders. So I still have them. I haven't really, I dig them out like every 2 or 3 years. I'll go flip through and see if there's anything that I don't have digitally that I want to rip or whatever. But yeah.
No, I'm the same. And I have the folders too. And I have all of that stuff. Because in terms of me, I just don't want to get rid of them. I don't.
Yeah, no, me either.
I just feel like come the apocalypse, I'm going to need them. Like there's not, right. I can't, that's one thing I cannot live without. And if something happened, like and it's hilarious because my husband and I we've been married for 20 years, but what we bought each other for our wedding present is we went on a Hollywood Boulevard and we each bought what we thought might be the last possible, like, yellow Sony Walkman. So we have 2 of them. And they're like pristine. Like we still have them. But yeah, I still have all my cassettes. And actually, until my car got totaled a few years ago, but I had a cassette player in my car.
Nice.
And now I have an old car, so I have a CD player still. So I still play that stuff in the car.
I had a cassette player.
I prefer it to doing my iPod.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I'm really starting to lean back into physical media. I went fully digital like MP3 years ago, and then I went from that to like mainly Spotify and YouTube streaming and all that stuff. But I kind of miss the intentionalness, if you will, of grabbing a disc and saying, okay, this is my soundtrack for the ride. I don't have 50,000 songs in front of me with Spotify to jump around and skip to. So I'm going to put this album on and listen to the whole damn thing. And if I don't like it, too bad. Right. So.
Yeah, no, I really, and I've gone back to listening because I had so many albums I loved. And when you're younger, you listen to stuff all the way through. Right. And you listen to all the songs and or at least I did. And so I've had to because iTunes screws things up. I've had to go and recreate the album as a playlist. So it's in the order that I listened to it, when I was younger. And it's amazing to go back and listen to an album all the way through that way instead of jumping around. Something that was really important to you when you were 13 or when you were 17 or, it's really valuable. I think I love that.
Yeah, it's totally valuable. And, I've brought this up a couple of different times in different episodes with a few other folks, but like, I'll say it again. it's not like it used to be. Like, years ago, for the most part, when an artist did an album, there was at least some sort of connection between the songs, even if it wasn't a theme or a concept. But sequencing was very intentional, right? And the songs that were included versus, rejected for an album. I mean, sometimes the record companies got involved with that, but, most of the times the artists were in control of that, or at least the producer had a say, and they were close to the musical side of it. So if you listen to an album all the way through in the order that it was conceived, it made sense. Plus, something funny too is you said that you spent all of your allowance on records. I spent probably 80% of my allowance on records and 20% on Star Wars toys. But the fact that I had to,
this is good.
Yeah, well, yeah, and the fact that I had to spend my own money mostly to get records, you're damn right I was going to listen to the whole thing, and I was going to listen to it over and over and over again to get my money's worth out of it.
Out of it.
Exactly.
I know, because I remember even in college, I allowed myself to buy 3 albums a week when they were $5. Because I worked at the record bar for a while. That was a very good thing for me.
Yeah.
But I 3 albums a week, $15 a week, because I was like, that's 2 pizzas, or everything I figured out. If I was going to buy that shirt, that's 4 albums. No, I mean, everything was like, how many albums could I buy?
That was your currency.
It was totally my current for years and years and years. And I still don't have, like, I used to go to Tower Records and I would just put like 50 things in my basket, and then I would realize I had to put like 49 of them back, but I had to put them in and then make those decisions. But yeah, I've spent more stupid money on music in my life. And when, CDs first started coming out, I would get all these imports from France or something, like some Joan arbitrating Back to the Night. I think I paid $50 for the CD or something and had it. And now it's like 3 cents on some. But when it first happened, I was like, I have to have that. I have to.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have no self-control when it comes to that stuff at all.
I was the same way, and still am. Like if I find a band, and I try to support artists as well, because, like, let's face it, Spotify, Apple Music, they're not making any money from that.
I buy CDs every time I can.
Yeah, me too.
Because they don't get any money.
Yeah,
from Spotify. They don't.
No, I know. So I've been really trying to purchase physical media for artists that I really want to support, and then I'll still listen to them on Spotify for convenience, but I will own a copy of the music. And also for the Apocalypse thing, because, for the longest time I was really resistant to going full streaming, because I was like, but then I don't own the song. Like, if I want to listen to it offline, I mean, this is before Spotify had the whole offline thing, I can't. And like that would enrage me. Right? So,
yeah. I mean, I don't even use Spotify, because I've had some musician friends that are just been so screwed by it. But so I would buy stuff from iTunes, but I would instantly, you would laugh, I have so many CDs of burning the songs I bought from iTunes in case they disappeared. So I have all that. I have such backups and backups and backups, because I cannot live without it. It's the same thing. Like streaming, that could just go.
Yeah.
So
you're my kind of doomsday prepper.
I know. Well, in that case, I mean, not for anything else. Like, I have no retirement, but damn it, I have 4 formats, freaking blue. So that's the thing.
That's what matters.
Now, what was the first thing you ever bought? What was the first record or CD?
Well, I don't know. Well, so I grew up with vinyl, and then went to cassette, and went to CD. But I don't even know the first CD I bought. I have a guess, but let's start with vinyl. First album I ever bought with my own money, summer of 1980, soundtrack to Xanadu. I just did an episode on the movie and the soundtrack, which will come out, I think, next week as we're next week as we're recording this. That is, so I'm really excited, because I was been jonesing to do a Xanadu episode for forever, and I did it.
I can't wait.
Yeah,
That's
first
great.
Cassette. I don't remember the first cassette that I bought, like the first actual commercial one.
Physical, yeah.
First CD. It's kind of silly, but it was probably Dead Milkmen. I think it was. You like Dead Milkmen?
But I love that you bought that.
Yeah, I think it was their second album. Came out when I was in high school. The second one was what? Was it Bucky Fellini? Yeah, I think so. or maybe it was Eat Your Paisley. I forget which one, but it was one of those two albums, and it was one of the first CDs that I bought because I got a CD player, I think, as a gift. I want to say for my birthday or something, and it was the Sony car CD player that came with the fancy shock mount and the cigarette lighter adapter, and it like Velcroed to the dashboard.
Right, all that stuff.
It was so stupid, but it worked.
It worked.
Yeah.
And you don't care. I mean, that's the thing. You don't care. If you can hear the song, you don't care. I don't care. Yeah. And I don't mind scratches, and I don't mind bad audio. My dad would get so mad at me because if I could even barely hear Sweet Virginia Blue Eyes, how scratchy it was, I would not let him change the channel. Like, I was like, no, you cannot.
That's great. So let me, speaking of album cuts, I just wanted to bring up a few that were on your list that I okay. that I wanted to go through real quickly. So also a Soul fan. You can see my Stax t-shirt. I just watched that documentary. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it was fabulous.
The Stax?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I'll link it. I forget. I think it was on, I want to say Hulu.
Great.
I forget which streaming service it was on.
So that's probably why I didn't know about it, because I dropped Hulu until the bear was coming back.
I do that too. We play musical streaming services. But yeah, my wife and I watched it, and we were just blown away by it. It was so well done, such good storytelling, and the production was great. And
good.
I've always loved that kind of music, and I have a connection to Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn because of the Blues Brothers. So
those guys are just like gods.
Oh, they're total gods. So one of the songs on your album cut of the day document that you sent me was "Think" by Aretha Franklin, which was obviously featured in the movie.
And the Blues Brothers.
Yeah. And by the way, anybody listening or viewing, if you're as much of a Blues Brothers aficionado as I am, please reach out. I'm looking for somebody to do an episode, maybe even two, because I think it's going to spill into 2 episodes, to go through the movie and the music, because I really think it's such an important cultural landmark. You know, it's sort of revitalized, maybe not revitalized, but maybe familiarized, a new generation with Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, James Brown, John Lee Hooker was in the movie briefly, Sam and Dave. Yeah. So itching to do an episode about that. So that song connected. The other one was, I didn't know that Glenn Campbell and Bobby Gentry did an album together.
Oh my God. Now I'm not going to be able to find it because it's in the other room, but the cover, did you look it up?
Yes, I did.
Oh my God. And we had that in our house. Like, my dad bought that for him and my mom, and I played it all the time. Yeah. It was really good.
Yeah, I'm going to have to listen to the whole thing, but the track that you singled out was "Let It Be Me," and I forgot who did that originally. Was it the Everly Brothers?
Yeah, it was the Everly Brothers.
Yeah, okay. Love that song, and the two of them together was just like, holy shit, didn't know this was a thing, so that was great. And another country, and again, you said that you're sort of into this whole, California country kind of thing, but Emmylou Harris doing "How High the Moon."
Oh my God, it's so good, isn't it?
Brilliant. Yeah, so good.
Beautiful. It's that little Stephen Grappelli thing. It's great. And also, it's the only other thing she did that was kind of like that was Mr. Sandman.
Yes.
Which is, but yeah, no, "How High the Moon," it's great. And it has that little ending. Like, it's so good. I'm so glad you like that one. Yeah, that whole record is amazing.
And then another one that sort of ties back to what we were talking about earlier with musical compatibility with our spouses. Before my wife and I were actually dating, when I felt like I was interested in her, and I mean, it wasn't like I had to think hard about it, because I definitely was attracted to her. But she was sort of dating somebody, and wasn't sure what was going to happen, and didn't know she liked me. But I made her a CD because we had connected over just music in general. And track 1 on the mix CD was "I Want to Be Your Lover" by Prince.
I love that song. So that whole record, again, unbelievable. The first thing.
Yeah.
I know. Well,
so it worked. Apparently it worked because, here we are. We'll be we're coming up on 20 years in December ourselves. So I guess I did the right move. I thought it was a baller move.
No, I think it's a great, obviously it was a great move, but that's the thing. You got to swing wide. You know what I
That's
mean?
it.
And if
That's
you
it.
got to do that if you're in love, and otherwise I met my husband and we had a one night stand in Ballygally, Northern Ireland, and I flew back to LA the next day, and then we wound up having our second date. He came over and we drove to Santa Fe.
Wow. So
And then we
cool.
got married in Vegas. So
Nice.
but you
Amazing.
know what I mean? Like you have to be brave, and if you're not brave in love, then it's not going to work.
Yeah, totally. You just have to be open to the universe, right? That's what my sister used to tell me. Um, my sister's a wise woman. So speaking of, great segue, speaking of like open to the universe and the universe playing silly games, let's talk about the Sid Redondo novel series, mystery
Okay.
series of yours.
Okay. Well, go ahead. Ask me
Oh, I
whatever
was
you
gonna
want.
say, again, I met you sort of, virtually, and then saw that you were, the author of these novels, and I'm like, oh, let me go grab one and see what it's about. And 50, 60 pages in, I was like literally laughing out loud. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. So I burned through the other three books, like, right in short order. And just wanted to talk about how you came up with the character and how you came up with the locations and the storylines. Maybe give me a bit of history.
Cool. I love to talk about it. I am. They've been very fun books to write. So originally, I mean, I am, and actually, I will show you because this is the only copy of the actual book cover from Romancing the Stone of
Oh wow,
Hamlet,
yeah.
which my husband got for me as a present. Sorry, Barry just fell down. Um, but anyway, so I always loved Romancing the Stone, and I'm a screenwriter as well. I mean, I was a screenwriter for a long time, so I really wanted to write the next Romancing the Stone. So I wrote, and but I didn't know what to do. And then I was sitting one day, and I just saw this woman in my head, and she was tiny, and she had on a mini skirt and stilettos, and she had one of those like bracelet. She had like flea market bracelets from here to here. It's kind
Okay.
of like,
Yeah.
and some guy comes out of the jungle with a machete, and she just goes and whacks him. And there she was. Like, she just came to life, and I didn't know who she was or whatever. So she started talking to me. And then I figured out she was a travel agent, and that would work for kind of adventure. So and then, you try to figure out, like, I can't go to Colombia. I've got to go somewhere else. Let's look at other places people might want to go. So I started out with this idea of a travel agent who'd never been anywhere, and where would be a place that she would always have wanted to go, and it would be Africa. So I started doing research on African crime. And the thing that just kept coming up over and over again was obviously animal poaching
Right.
and endangered species and trafficking and all that stuff. And so all the books have an animal, endangered species, wildlife crime kind of, element to all of them. So I felt like that I could get away with the 80s vibe as long as I had a modern horror, going on. So anyway, it was a script first. It was called Animal Instincts, which is such a porn title. So I just changed it for the book. Yeah, and then I was very lucky to get a 2-book deal, so I had to figure out the second book. And we had just recently been to Tasmania, and I loved Australia. Did some work in Australia, and they wanted a cruise ship book, so I thought, okay, let's try to meld those two. And then I did a lot of research. That book focuses around, for everyone but you who's read it, focuses around the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine, which are supposedly functionally extinct, but there's still a huge community of people who still think they're alive and are constantly turning in videos on YouTube and stuff all the time. So it's interesting to me. And then during the beginning of the pandemic, I had to write about somewhere I'd been because I couldn't go anywhere. So I had been to London like 25 times. So I knew that I could write London. And so, and then you have to find the animal. And I looked up at that time, now, thank God, the little creatures have fallen down the list a little bit. But at that time, the number one most endangered creature in the UK was the hazel dormouse.
Wow.
So they're a little bit better now because they put some of them on the Isle of Man and stuff. But anyway, so I figured she could put that. She has a rather large purse. so she could probably keep the dormouse in her purse. And then I had a lot. I always wanted. I was fascinated by Bali always, and I have 3 friends who've lived there. And then all the books are set in 2006, 2007 right now, because I wanted to set them before the Muslim ban and all of that other stuff, so I could kind of still deal with travel. So they're set in that period. And then when I was trying to figure out where else I wanted to set the 4th book, I realized that Eat, Pray, Love had just come out. And I was like, what a nightmare for travel agents. It's this idea, right? So I decided that I would set this book in Bali. And then when I looked it up, the Bali starling, there were only 7 Bali starlings in 2007 that were in the wild. And I was like, okay, that is my animal. So I kind of figure out the place first, then the animal, then the problem for Sid, like what gets her there. So that's kind of the way the process goes, I think. Because the hardest thing for me in the books, because she is very dominated by her family. She lives in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and the hardest thing is to legitimately get her to leave Bay Ridge. Like, that's the hardest story problem that I have every time, is like, what is bad enough, you know what I mean, to get her to actually run away. So that's kind of how the book goes. And again, it's very much inspired by Romancing the Stone and Charade and Bringing Up Baby and that kind of zany, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Screwball mysteries. And I was unbelievably lucky that this year the new one, Cheap Thrills, which is somewhere, actually won Best Comic Mystery of 2023.
Yes, congratulations.
So thank you, but I still can't believe it, so I have to say it out loud. True. So Sid, and I'm not, I think the only thing I share with Sid is a sense of crippling responsibility. Like, that's both of our flaws. But she's not like me at all. Like, she's totally into fashion, and she's totally into like mid-range fashion. And she's a bargain hunter, and she's very different than I am. It's not even like she's an alter ego. She just exists somehow in my head. And I don't even know, my husband says there's maybe we have more in common than I think, but I don't know. I like to write her, but her voice just comes through me. I can hear her talking, and so that makes it fun to write the book. So, I have to do a lot of research for all of them, and doing mysteries is a little bit complicated in terms of the plotting, but she just comes. So that's, I'm lucky.
Yeah, her personality really sort of weaves itself into everything, and I love how you've developed her throughout the 4 books, because she stays the same. She stays very true to her character, but you can sort of see her evolving in certain ways, I guess, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. It's hard, the mystery character part. Some people don't want them to ever change, so they come back to the book, but if you can inch it, you can get away with it, I think.
Sure. So a couple of things that I had taken notes about in preparation for this, because I remembered a few points in the book that were sort of, personal fun for me. Atlantic City, the whole convention thing. It's the obvious choice if she's in Bay Ridge, right? Like, where do realtors have their conventions? It's got to be AC, but I was born and raised there. So talking about Atlantic City. Yeah. And then, one of the things she carries in her purse, not to, give anybody a spoiler, but, she has these Atlantic City shot glasses. And I was like, my God, we had those in my house when I was a kid,
Now, they double, because obviously they're shot glasses, but they also double. They fit perfectly for listening through walls.
That's right.
Because they fit right on your ear, like they're tiny, and so she uses them for that too.
Yeah.
Sometimes she needs to know what's going on.
I wish I knew that trick when I was a kid. I think I didn't realize that those were perfectly suited for small ears. For
small ears, they're very good.
And then you've got a character named Dolores who works at an embassy. I forget which novel this was in, which book, but she's from Teaneck, and I laughed at that because I drive into Manhattan a few days a week for work, and I drive right through Teaneck on Route 4 every day. So it's like,
I know I have 2 of my best friends, one from college and one who lives out here, are all from New Jersey. So I used to go visit them and their families. And one of my friends her family still lives in Demarest. I was there all the time.
Yeah. Okay. I know what
Yeah.
Demarest is.
So I love, and Route 9, like all of those things I love. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, I just love the East Coast connection, and I think it's great. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, just sort of, sort of plot points or whatever from the book is, you had a reference to the mixed up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. One of your favorite books as a kid, because it was sure mine.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And don't you still want to like spend the night in the Museum of Art?
Yes.
Like, isn't that the best thing ever? I wrote a rom-com, a script where the couple does that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. They get in trouble all the time, but that's one of the things they do. They actually sneak in and spend the night there because who doesn't want to do that?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, every time I go there to this day as an adult, I look for places and be like, "Ooh, I could probably get away with hiding there until they close."
Don't you feel like it's still possible? I think that was one of the geniuses of that book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it has so many levels, that book, because when you think about how she feels and looking after her brother, like there's so many things, levels, and the automat, all of that stuff. But I feel like, she just tapped into this thing that anybody would want to do. And that's obviously totally stolen for Night at the Museum. But it's
for sure.
Right?
Right.
Because who does it? Who wouldn't want to do that? It's the coolest thing ever.
It is the coolest thing ever. Speaking of Automat, by the way, another great documentary. If you or any of our viewers and listeners haven't seen it, there was a documentary that came out about the Automat, and they sort of went back through the history. Sort of a short bio of Horn and Hard Art, who were the ones that started it, and really great, interesting piece. I went once as a kid. My parents took me to New York on a trip. I must have been 10 years old. So this is like, I don't know, 82. And I think there was only maybe one or two automats left in the city.
Yeah, there's not a lot left, but they were still around.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious how much they feature in like early rom-coms.
Yes.
Like 40s rom-coms. They're in there all the time. Have you ever seen Easy Living?
No.
Huge scene in that. It was written by Preston Sturges, but he didn't direct it. But it's Jean Arthur, and it's mostly noted by the fact that it opens with Jean Arthur riding on a double-decker bus, and a mink coat lands on her head. It's the opening. One of my favorites. But anyway, there's a huge like fight scene in the automat with pies coming in and out, and all. It's great. It's really good.
I need to go watch that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's good.
Yeah. All right, so let's pivot a bit, right? We're talking about Sid. We've covered some of our musical topics. Let's tie the two together, and this is how I sort of pitched you to come on the podcast in the first place. This is going to be fun, I think. I have this thing, and clearly you do too, of like connecting music with different things, whether it's a book or life experience or whatever it might be. So I thought it might be fun to pick some songs that were representative of not only Sid herself, but the books, right? And different things. So and the idea was not to reveal them to each other until now.
No, we don't know. We don't know them,
So,
and I cannot wait to hear yours.
Well, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do book by book?
I want you to
do
yours first. You do yours first.
All of mine first. Okay.
All of yours first.
All right, cool. So, call me Captain Obvious, but for the first book, since it's set in Tanzania, I went with Africa by Toto. I feel like it's something Sid would listen to and sing along with in her Galaxy 500. Plus, they mention Mount Kilimanjaro, which is in Tanzania, so there's a connection. And then I was like, I know some African artists. I worked for a nonprofit for a few years back in 2008 that did a lot of work in sub-Saharan Africa. So I got to do a lot of interesting work in places like Democratic Republic of Congo, and Burundi and a few other countries where we were piloting like satellite networks and that kind of stuff. Never really connected with anything with Tanzania. So I said, let me go look up music from that era, 2006 in Tanzania, what was popular. So there's this whole genre of Tanzanian popular music called bongo flavor. New to me, and I found a couple of playlists on Spotify, and I think one of the biggest artists is called Ali Kiba, and the song is called Cinderella. It's off of his album from 2006, so I figured maybe Sid could have heard that playing in a market stall or something, or in a car when she was in Dar. Yeah.
I love that.
All right, so that's book one. I did 2 songs per book. So book two, I have Tasmania is the name of the song by a band called Pond. Didn't know this band, didn't know the song. Was searching Spotify for literally just searching for the word Tasmania to see what came up. And this was like the first hit, so I played it. It's really actually a good song. So there's that. And then I thought it might be fun to, again, continue the thread with an artist from that region. So I found an article that listed some contemporary Tassie, as they call them, artists. And there's a artist named Maddie Jane, and the song's called No Other Way. It's just a fun song. It's like an upbeat sort of guitar-driven song, and I just love it. Yeah. So, yeah, it's on the playlist. Yeah. All right, moving on to book three and moving on to England. I went with like the first song was the title of the place where the story takes place, right? So it's England by the band called The National. I've heard of them. I'm peripherally familiar with their music, but now, I've actually sat and listened to a whole one of their songs. I like it. And then for the sort of story tie-in, I went with Jack the Ripper by Screaming Lord Sutch and the Savages. Sort of a novelty song from the 60s, like a surf rock kind of, in the vein of like Monster Mash.
Tell me the band again, Screaming Lord
Sutch, Sutch, and the Savages. And I'll link. I made a playlist for this on Spotify, so I'll link that in the show notes, and I'll send it to you, Wendell, afterwards. But
great.
Just a great fun song. And I actually had that song. I had this Halloween playlist that I would have on in the background when I was like handing out candy to trick-or-treaters and stuff. And it was on there already. So I was like, all right, that's an obvious one. I already know that song. All right. Last book, Indonesia, name of the song, by Lamont Landers, artist I did not know of until a couple days ago, and love him. Great voice, very soulful kind of music. I just, again, searched, found something I hadn't heard before, hit play, and fell in love. All right, the last one. This was the most fun one, I think. The song is called Starling. It's by Tori Amos. And if there was ever an artist that the Eat, Pray, Love Bali tourists were listening to on repeat, it has to be Tori Amos.
That's so very true. That's so true. Hilarious. I love that. I actually really like Tori Amos, but there is an Eat, Pray, Love element to her.
Yes.
To her fans, at least.
For sure.
That's great.
Yeah. So what are yours?
Well, see, it's real. I have to kind of explain. So Sid, because she's fictional, whatever. It's a little bit more constructed than that. So she's very overprotected by her family. So almost all of her playlist, at least the songs I'm giving here, were influenced by her family, by her overprotective family, or parts of family that are missing. So she has Uncle Leon is her cool uncle. He worked for the Natural History Museum in New York as a taxidermist. But when he was in the mid to late 60s, he actually worked for the Natural History Museum in London. So he was in Carnaby Street, and he's total Stones, total Beatles, total all of that. So he would sing her to sleep, and he would sing, Don't Sleep in the Subway, Petula Clark as well. That was his little thing. But anyway, so he loved the Stones. So he would always dance around in the living room with her to Jumping Jack Flash. But then when she was like 11, she snuck out and went to see the Whoopi Goldberg version of the movie Jumping Jack Flash. And she heard Aretha, her version with Keith Richards. Yes. And so that's her driving music. Like, she will be blasting that over the Verazon and Narrows Bridge. Like Jumpin' Jack Flash by Aretha, that's one of them. So her dad died when she was 4. And he had one album in the house, and it was Stevie Wonder's Signed, Sealed, Delivered. And that's the one where he's coming out of the box, right?
Yep.
And so, because she also loved the Beatles, her uncle, her favorite song from that record is We Can Work It Out, his version of We Can Work It Out, which is great.
Good one.
So that's number 2, because that's her dad and her uncle together. And then her dad was also an extra in Saturday Night Fever, which is which actually was set and shot in Bay Ridge.
Bay Ridge, yep.
So Staying Alive's number 3 in her playlist. But then I was like, how can I connect to her as a character if she doesn't have any of my musical? I mean, I love all those songs, but you know what I mean? Like, how can I? Yeah. And so I was like, she lives in a house that's almost all men. It's like, so how could I possibly like have her like Linda Ronstadt or have her like, you know what I mean? And then I figured it out. So little Sid is digging through like the garbage and she finds 4 records with no sleeves. Right? And she just takes them. And it's Linda Ronstadt's Hasten Down the Wind. Just here, if you recall that record.
Yes. By the cover, sure.
And it's Carly Simon's No Secrets. And it's Buckingham Nicks.
Nice.
And then it's Joni Mitchell's For the Roses because she's naked inside. So her brother Jimmy has like just done the softcore porn covers and thrown the albums away. So that's and so from those she falls in love with all those artists. And so the other 4 would be Races or Run from Buckingham Nicks. It would be You're So Vain, Carly Simon. It would be Carrie by Joni, because even though it's not from that record, it's exactly what you were thinking. The winds are in from Africa. Last night I couldn't sleep, first line, right? So she loves that song especially. And then Linda Ronstadt, she loves all the rock stuff, but her favorite song is Prisoner in Disguise because she always feels it.
Right.
So that's the 7. But, you know, it's funny trying to figure out a fictional person's musical taste.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So anyway, that's my thoughts on Sid. So, but when I figured out like the horny cousins, then I was able to make it work.
That is amazing. Wow.
But she's yeah, I think she loves music, but she had really limited, you know, there wasn't a lot. She had to kind of listen to whatever was in the house.
Right.
So,
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny how that happens. I think I'm the oldest. So I think I influenced my siblings' taste, but a lot of people learn from their older, like I wish I had an older sibling. My cousin Robin had the coolest, like she was the first time I ever heard, the Allman Brothers at the Fillmore East.
Oh, great album.
Because she was like cooler. She was like 4 or 6 years older, and she played that one day, and I just couldn't even stand it. And I was little, you know. But so I didn't have a lot of people doing that for me. So, but she has a lot of people older than she is. So there's some trickle down.
Right. Yeah, her whole family. Yeah, she's the baby, right? Of like the whole,
she's the baby
all the cousins
of
and stuff.
And
yeah,
only girl cousin. Yeah.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I was lucky enough to have an older brother and an older sister, and they were significantly older. I was an accident, let's face it. But my sister's 13 years. Yes, well, that's what my parents always said. They swore it wasn't true, but you know, I don't believe them. But my sister's 13 years older than me. My brother's 11 years older. So I was influenced by both of those. And my sister was into a lot of the same sort of stuff as you, like that, you know, Southern California 70s, you know, like America. Yeah. And I mean, not California, with the Doobie Brothers, and you know, like there's just that sort of stuff. And she's the one that turned me on to Steely Dan. Probably not even on purpose, because you know, she worked in radio, and when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and Josie had come out as a single from Asia. Wow. I had a promo 45. I still have it somewhere, of Josie, and I played that song over and over
and over.
Yeah, and you know,
so that's how you got Steely Dan. I love that.
That was my first Steely Dan record that I ever owned. And then when I was a little bit older, you know, I mean, everybody heard the stuff on the radio, like Do It Again and, you know, Reelin' in the Years, and great songs. But I didn't really get introduced to their back catalog or their album cuts until, you know, probably my early teenage years. And I can't remember which album. Might have been Asia, and I think I got a copy of Asia, and I mentioned Steely Dan to her, knowing she liked them, and she was like, "Oh, well, if you're into that album, you should listen to Gaucho," and then like, you know, Royal Scam, and like she just gave me the whole discography to sort of go do homework on, and I just was like blown away.
Oh my god, you know? I can't even to get all those at once, because I bought Can't Buy a Thrill when it came out.
Right.
But I love Reelin' in the Years, but there's so many great tracks on that. And when I played in bars, you can't play Steely Dan as a solo artist. Like, it's impossible. But I played Dirty Work. I figured it out. I figured out how to play it, and I sang Dirty Work. But yeah, to find all that stuff and those lyrics, and I just can't even, I love them all so much. And I would find, again, this is why I ruined, because I love Michael McDonald too. I'm the first person to admit that I love him.
Oh, and nothing wrong with that.
I love him. But I would always just play that little bit, that Broadway Duchess bit. You know what I mean? And I, over and over and over, that little tiny thing where he's saying, I just can't even. Yeah. And Bad Sneakers maybe my favorite. It's so hard for me to pick, but
I love Bad Sneakers just because of where they were writing that album. You know, they were like over LA and they wanted to go back to New York, and that's what the album's pretty much about, or you know, most of it anyway, so right? Great. So yeah, love it.
No, they're just there's nobody like them. I can't. And I don't know, it's funny. Are people listening to them now? You will know this. Like younger people, do they get it?
Yes.
Good.
There was this whole sort of thing, and it really peaked, I think, last summer, and everybody was calling it the Danaissance, where all these Gen Z kids and the younger end of the millennial kids were like discovering Steely Dan, like I guess, you know, rating their Gen X and Boomer parents' CD collections, maybe, I don't know, but and you know, at first I thought, okay, you know, passing fancy, you know, maybe it was on TikTok or something, you know, whatever, but it stuck, and I think it's still sticking, where a lot of the, you know, and if you've watched previous episodes, I have guests that are, I mean, you know, a few of them are like 26, 28, and they know more about Steely Dan than I do. You know, it's just like, holy shit.
I love that, because I don't want them to disappear. You know what I mean? And they're just too great, and you can't, and they're up there with everybody important, you know? Yes.
I don't think they'll ever disappear, hopefully. I think every generation will eventually get there and
I was going to ask you, speaking, I know I brought up Ricky Lee Jones earlier, but you've heard her version with Joe Jackson of Showbiz Kids?
No, I don't think I have.
Sad.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll send you the link to that. It's great. Okay. Actually, it's really good, because we love Joe. I mean, how can you
not love Joe Jackson?
Love Joe Jackson.
I saw him live in 2018 in New York. Wow. Yeah, he sounded just like he sounded in the 80s. I mean, like his
funny.
voice
There are a couple of people.
Perfect.
Todd Rundgren's like that too. Like he can still sing like that. It's amazing.
Yeah, great show. Really great show. And it was a small venue, so it was just like, it was beautiful. Really, really great show.
I love that. Yeah, I'll send you that track. You'll like it. I think.
Thank you.
It's very funky. It's mostly bass, and then their voices is really good.
Cool.
But but a lot of people can't cover them very well. So
yeah, they're such a hard band to cover, and yes, they play like really difficult jazz chords and voicings and stuff like that. But like, just, you know, I think they have such a distinctive sound that's why they're so hard to cover. Yeah,
the delivery is really hard to pull off, I think.
Fagan sings like nobody else. Like nobody sounds like him. And it's funny because, you know, he didn't want to be the lead singer. Like for years, he was trying to get out of it. You know, and then eventually he just accepted it and was like, okay, I guess it's me, you know, because nobody else sings it the way I'm hearing it in my head, so I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, so, one of my friends lives in a condo complex with David Palmer.
Oh, really? No kidding.
I know.
So
I haven't met him, but apparently.
Yeah. Oh, poor guy got the short end of that stick.
I know, he did. He did some good vocals on that record, though.
He did, yeah. Speaking of Dirty Work, by the way, if you see any live Steely Dan shows, they started to get to the point where they were bringing that song back into the set list, but they let the Danettes sing it. So Donald doesn't sing it because I guess it just was never really his song anyway, because, you know, Palmer sang it on the record, but... Yeah, so the Danettes actually sing lead, and it's just like the best thing ever.
Wow! I would love to see that, because I'm trying to think. I was watching the Dukes of September not long ago again, because of course I bought that.
Oh yeah,
but
of course, Michael McDonald and Boz, by the way,
and Boz. So it's a win-win-win. But yeah, I love all the people they get as backup singers. All three of them, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I'll link. There's one performance, and which one it is escaping me, but I'll find it, where there's a fantastic performance of Dirty Work with the Danettes, and I'll link it.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
I would love to.
Yeah.
I would love to see that because I love that song. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, me too. Cool. Well, Wendell, anything else you want to cover? I think we've touched on a lot of stuff.
No, I think we've done a lot of stuff. I'm so happy. I'm so happy and honored to be on here because you know how I admire you, because you know more. I don't know how many Gen Z people know about Steely Dan, but you are my expert. So I no one touches you for me. And also because you sent me the Eternal Loop of Time Out of Mind, and I cooked my Thanksgiving dinner to that. That is when I was like, I love you. I did. I played it all day. All day. And it made me
I
so
did
happy.
the same thing. When I came across that, I was like, first I was incredulous. I was like, who the hell made this? And
then you're like, thank you.
Yes. Then like 10 minutes into it, I was like, this is the best thing ever. It's just
just enough variation in that song that it comes back around. It's perfect. It was great. I loved that. I was so happy that day.
Excellent. Well, glad to be of service.
Well, that's good. Okay, so thank you. And thank you so much for reading the books, because it was very kind of you to even buy the first one.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. My pleasure. And thank you for being on, and hope to have you back in the future.
Okay, great. I would love that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Alrighty.
Chad. Take care of yourself.
Talk to you soon.
Have a good
You too.
weekend.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.